Are you coming back to school with me? We could have done it all so easily.
Hello, Craig Thompson Wood here, and today I want to show you something which, as an experienced painter, I've experienced many times in my life, and I know it's one of the things that people get worried about when painting models, preparing models for painting, anything like that. They're always worried about ruining the model. And there's, I guess, many different ways a person might conceivably, quote unquote, ruin a model. But I've found that there's very few instances where I've actually ruined a model by my poor decisions and things. And I don't think I've ever ruined a model by painting. Because even when I've done a model which I don't like, to the point where I really don't like it and I just want to start over, I just do that. I just start over. There's ways to strip the models of the paint, to repaint them. So that's not an issue. What I'm showing you today is something I've done just now, and I didn't do this on purpose, I promise you, just for the sake of doing this, but I thought, you know what, I'll take this as a teachable moment here, and looking at this and say, oh man, this is not good and I need to fix it. I thought, well, rather than just me jumping ahead and fixing it, I'm going to show you how I'm fixing it, so that way you can learn with me. One, learn to avoid the mistake that I made, and two, how to fix it if you do make such a mistake. So what I did is I bought some Monster Apocalypse figures, and including my big boy Gakura here. And in gluing it together, I had a glue, and I don't think I've got the bottle here still. But I had a glue, and the glue was very jelly on the inside. It was thick, and it was barely flowing, and so it was just it took a while to come out. And then when it came out, I didn't have any of the super glue accelerator. Zip Kicker is one. I often call it Zip Kicker because that's the stuff that I'd first experienced when I first bought it. It was that. But this is the stuff here. It's a super glue activator, and this stuff is great for when using super glue because, you know, one little pump on the spray here instantly hardens the super glue. So once you get the model positioned the way you like, you don't have to hold it in place and wait for the super glue to hold enough that you can let go of it, and etc. Or end up with situations like I did with Gakura here. Because the glue was so jelly and it wasn't setting well, and then I kind of propped it against something and let it kind of hold that way. But in the end, it had shifted, and you can see it's got a big gap right around the base here, up the side, and a noticeable like shift and level disparity in his back there. I mean, if I paint it like this, it's just going to be noticeable even from game standards. And as much as I say don't worry, be messy and things, this is enough that this is going to be distracting to me, that it's going to be bad enough that people are going to notice it right away unless I fix this. So there is, thankfully, a fairly simple way to fix this, and I'm going to show you this, and I will also continue on, and I will show you the Gakura afterwards, how he looks once he's been painted, so that you will see that this whole thing should be fairly invisible by the time I'm done. Okay, you'll know it's there because I showed it to you, but if I'd never shown you, you hopefully will have never known that it was there in the first place. So what I'm going to be using is this stuff here. This stuff is just known as green stuff. It's known as green stuff because, as you would probably know, your primary colors of blue and yellow equal the secondary color of green. And so there are two parts of some sort of material here that when mixed together they become hard. And this is what the sculptors actually use. I believe it's what they use. At least they used it before. I'm not sure if they still do now. But this is what they use when in sculpting. They use the green stuff to sculpt. They'll use like maybe a wire frame and build up some of the basic shape of it. But then the details are all done with green stuff for the casting. And so I'm going to mix up some of this green stuff, and I'm just going to plug it into the things here. Now, one thing to remember with green stuff is that it's very sticky when you're working with it. So as you're pulling, it's going to stick to your fingers and things like that. So you want to keep your fingers wet. So having either a bowl of water or spitting on your fingers works too, or your tools. I have actually been known, full disclosure, to put tools into my mouth when I'm working with green stuff, just as an easy way to do it, because usually I'm too lazy to get some water. But for purpose of this video, I'm going to be a good boy and I'm going to go get some water. Now, this is the tool I'll be using, and hopefully you recognize this because it means that you've been going to the dentist. This is a dental tool for dental pick. So this is just a great tool because it can just, you know, pick at the details and things like that I'm wanting, and move the green stuff around without my fat fingers trying to do the finer details. And so I knew somebody who had once worked with a dental office, and they were just disposing of these. So I asked them to grab me some, and voila, I have some dental tools to work with. So I've got a few different kinds of dental tools here that I can use of different sizes. So it's got like a larger nub on the end there. Yeah, so they're very useful for this kind of work. All right, so let me just mix up the green stuff and we'll get started. Okay, so I have a thing of green stuff, and I have my bowl of water here, and I've been dipping my fingers into as I work with it. So I just making like a little green stuff snake here. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to insert this. Try to gauge about the thickness. You don't want to overdo it, but I'm going to just put this in here. Pardon the thumping upstairs. Maybe I'll put it the other way around. Okay, so just plopping it in there like so. And then from there, once it's kind of roughly into shape, I'm going to dip my tool in the water. And I'm going to now just push it in, and I'm going to try to be aware of where I'm going with it, and just try to mimic the pattern of the hair in the area where it's covering. And even this, I'm seeing I'm going to need some more, so I'm just going to pull the stuff back. And the green stuff is very malleable at this point. It's going to become rock hard once it's done. So it will, but until then, I'm just going to push it in, and like I say, just fill that gap with this. And the idea being is once it's all done, you won't even know there was a gap. Okay, and boom. So, really, what I'm hoping I'm able to do here is just remove some of the fear that people are having of, oh no, I've ruined it, and I've got to buy another one, whatever. See, there you go. I mean, look at that. Right now, the level is smooth across. Going from there to there, it's smooth across. So I just need to fill in there, and then I'll just continue on down there. Okay, so let me just get some more green stuff. Yeah. Now, when you're mixing the green stuff, I would always suggest do less than you might think, because I always end up mixing way too much and then wasting it. So even still here, I have so much left. I'm probably not even use it all. I was wondering at first, was this going to be enough? And as you see, it's going to be way more than enough. Because I saw, oh, that's such a big gap and everything. But no, it looks good. Okay, wet my tool here. What I'll do, I'll put this here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm dabbing it in. And well, you see that is actually quite a sizable gap there, so I will come back to that part. But I'm just going to push this stuff down here, because this part is smooth. So I guess what helps here is that this model where I'm doing is fur, and fur is easy to do because of the texture of it. The texture is easy to work with the green stuff. But I mean, when green stuff, once it hardens, can be sanded and everything too, and filed, so you can always file it down afterwards if that were your concern. Like if you were working on a smoother part. Like say I was doing something here in the middle of his chest, could still do it. You could just you're ensuring that when you're doing the final touches to the green stuff like I'm doing right now, that you're making it smooth. Okay, so now as I see I've neglected to put something into this gap here, so that's going to be my next step, going into there. So I'll pull off another little piece of green stuff. I'll just stick that in his back, like so. I don't even know if that's enough, but again, doesn't matter. I can always go back and do another lot of it. Yeah, it's not going to be enough. I've started to fill the gap, but not quite enough. Okay, I'll take another chunk here. And it's not feeling quite tacky yet, so I don't feel the need to. Now it's just as I say that, it's starting to feel a little bit tacky, but I'm not going to worry about it just now, because that's when you start dipping your fingers into the water, just so that it's not sticking to your fingers. Because that's often what I found when I first started working with this stuff. I was so frustrated because I was trying to do things and it just kept sticking to my fingers, and then anything I would do would just pull apart because of the stickiness. Well, the trick is then, as I say, just keep your fingers wet. Okay, and what I'm doing, I'm dragging the tool here. Let's see if I can focus on that area. I'm dragging the tool here into the existing grooves to try and follow the original direction of the hair. So I'm not creating my own paths and stuff. I'm just going with what is already there. And looking at it again, you know, just pushing things down to their spots. You can see now that that whole space is flush and thing. Still has this butt crack. And I just need to finish up underneath here. So I have, let's see, I'm going to wet my fingers now. I'm going to dip up my finger in there. And let's just see. So I might have actually done just the right amount. Oh, there's a little piece right here. And that's all of it. All right. So I might have actually done well this time, not overdone it. But again, you see, I went way under what I thought I would need. Just I'll start with this, and I thought that might just do the back, but it's ended up doing like everything. So always start with less and then work your way up, because it just stretches out much further than you think. Okay, and then I'm going to stretch that up there. And like so. Yep. Perfect. All right. So you see I just kind of roughly put that into the space there, and I'm just going to now pull it down. Now I had to be careful. I wasn't careful, and I touched my finger back there, and look what I did. I just smooshed all my detail. So that's one thing too, is like sometimes when sometimes my understanding is when these sculptors are sculpting, they sculpt a part and then leave it to dry, and then they go back to the other part, because otherwise they end up doing exactly what I did just here, and they flatten the detail that they just worked on. So now, because I've got all this stuff and I want to use it and I don't want to waste it, I'm going to go ahead, but I'm just going to be much more careful now to make sure I'm touching only the bottom of the base. I'm not going to touch the back anymore. And so I'm just going to work my way down here. Again, just following the natural path, pushing it into the gap. Okay, now it's sticking to the tool and pulling out of the gap as I try and push it in. So I'm going to wet it, and then okay, and I'm trying to make sure I'm anchoring it right now, because it seems to be a bit loose there. So I'm anchoring it by shoving it into the gap before I do any more molding of that spot. But overall, it's looking like a million times better than what it was. But, you know, like you see, even me, who's been doing this for many, many years, still make mistakes. But the difference is now I know how to fix them. And I don't want people... So you can hear that ting, ting, ting. That's the stickiness there. texture. Okay, it looks a bit too much like holes, so I'm going to break that up a bit. Again, this part does not want to stick here. Okay. You know what? It doesn't want to stick because there's not really a gap to stick into. So I'm just going to use my tool here. I'm going to just roughly rip those pieces off there. Okay, and voila. I want piece down there would look silly. Okay. Tap those off. And that's fine. So you see, in that spot there, right in here, there is actually no gap. The super glue, that is completely flush with between those two pieces. The super glue did its job there. And scrape that piece off here. Okay, that looks good. So you see, that didn't take long at all. That was like maybe a 10-minute fix for, you know, if I were to given up and go buy another one, it would take me more time just to go out and buy it, plus never mind all the expense of it. And it even didn't take that much green stuff. Like I said, I was worried that but that little tiny bit I had, I mean, I would have thought this was going to all be needed, but it was only a very small amount that's needed. So green stuff, I remember when I first bought green stuff, it was a large spiral of this, and it was like $3.95. I still remember that. Now you get like a piece that's maybe 2 or 3 times as long as this, and it's $8. So yeah, shrinkflation, inflation, hitting from both ends on that one, but it is what it is. You see, it's very useful stuff, so hard to say don't buy it because it's too expensive, because the alternative is you're going to have a model that doesn't look good, or you're going to want to buy another one because you ruined it. Okay, now I'm noticing here, using my tool here, I'm going to pick up some of that green stuff. In here, there's still a bit of a gap, so I'm just going to stuff that into the gap here. And I'm just going to texture that. And if there's a tiny, tiny gap in one spot, I'm not going to worry about it. It's hardly going to be noticeable now. I mean, the fact that the majority of this is all covered up properly and textured, and like I said, it's going to blend in. You're not going to notice the difference once it's painted. Then that's mission accomplished. If there's a tiny little, there is the slightest of the gap still in there. I'm not pushing down anymore. Sorry, it's up in here, the slightest gap, and I'm not going to push it down anymore, because if I keep pushing it down, it's just going to, the gap will, because right now it's flush. It looks as it should. Okay, I'm just double checking the textures here, going the way I want them to. Okay, examining very closely that everything I think that should work. Okay. And like I said, if there's tiny spots where it's not, like I'm noticing even right here, there's a bit of a ridge of fur there, and I'm not quite leveling up to that. But again, in the grand scheme of the model and everything, once it's all painted, you're really not going to notice that unless you're looking closely for it, and especially not if you're looking for it. I mean, I will know it because it's there, but a person looking at it would have to really go for a careful inspection, looking for problems in order to see that. And that's kind of defeating the purpose of it. It's not for, I'm not painting this for some sort of international painting competition or something. This is just for a game, right? I want it to look good for the game. Now, I actually pulled aside another one here, and it happens to be another Monster Apocalypse model. for when you make mistakes and correcting them. This is when I did finish. So this is my model here called Phobos 7. I'm quite happy with the way it turned out. But you'll notice here on the base, Phobos has one leg up higher than the others. And that's because, as much as I like to think I'm a smart guy, I sometimes do some really stupid things, and I didn't pay attention to which leg was supposed to go in which spot. And so when I glued it together, I realized I'd put this leg in the wrong spot. So it was up higher than the others. So again, rather than trying to rip it apart and damaging the model and whatever else and just crusting up with glue, I left it and I just modified. This is actually the top of a toothpaste tube, right? So this is the cap, and so I realized that was the right height I needed to put that to prop up the leg to give the support necessary. And with this model, because it was so, you can't see it now because of the magnets underneath, but what I also did is I drilled through the base to add to countersink the feet here, just to give it that little bit more grip, because the fact it was like 3 tiny tippy toes glued to the base here, this model's always made me nervous. But now that I put it onto the toothpaste thing here, plus the countersinking, I might arguably have the strongest Phobos model in the world, right? Unless somebody has done some special pinning or something else. I've done some extra things here. So this model is quite sturdy on its base. And then having the magnets on the bottom here, just make sure that when I'm not putting it into a carrying case where things are going to be smushing it. It's stuck to a magnetic sheet, and so it really no pressure on it either in any way. So yeah, that's just another example though of how, if you make a mistake, think about what can I do to fix this rather than ripping it all apart and starting over again and getting really frustrated. So as I said, I will show the Gakura once it's done being painted, so you can see an example of how it looked from the beginning and how it looked terrible the way I glued it together, to how I've now you've seen the putty, and then how am I going to, what would it look like when it's all done. All right, until next time, I'm your host, Craig Thompson Wood, saying thanks for coming to the classroom.
Are you coming back to school with me?